The front door creaked louder than I remembered. Paint was chipping off the frame, and the porch light was dead. I stepped inside, expecting at least the smell of dinner, or maybe the sound of someone watching TV in the den. Nothing. The house was dead quiet. My name is Ella Carter. I'm 28 years old. I just got back to the States after 18 months working wildlife conservation projects in South Africa. Before we start, how's your day going, and where are you joining from? I dropped my duffel by the door and looked around the living room. Dust on the coffee table, mail stacked on the sideboard. Not one sign that anyone gave a damn I was coming home. I called out, "Mom?" Nothing. "Dad?" Still nothing. The last message I got from them had been 5 days ago. Just a photo from Cancun, cocktails, ocean, something about recharging. I made my way down the hall to the back of the house. My stomach was tight, like it already knew something was off. When I opened the door to my grandparents' old room, the air hit different, stale, warm, medical. That's when I saw her. Grandma Alice was in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines. An IV stand stood crooked next to her, and a heart monitor beeped slow and steady. She looked tiny, pale. There were faint bruises on her arms, like someone had been poking at her veins too long. There wasn't a nurse in sight. No aide, no family. Just her. I moved closer. "Grandma?" Her eyelids fluttered, but she didn't speak. Her lips were dry, cracked. I grabbed the water bottle off her side table and held the straw up to her mouth. She tried to sip. Her voice came out like a whisper. "You came." I nodded. Of course I did. I glanced around the room, looking for meds, paperwork, anything that told me what was going on. There was a pile of dirty linens in a basket, a tray with barely touched soup. This wasn't care. This was abandonment. I stepped into the hallway and pulled out my phone. I opened Instagram. The first post was Mom, smiling with a drink in hand. The caption read, "Finally some peace. Much needed break." I stared at that screen for a solid minute, then turned it off. They left her here like this. No nurses, no hospice team, just machines and a threadbare blanket. I sat back down by Grandma and held her hand. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Right then, I knew I wasn't just visiting. I was taking over. Because someone had to, and clearly, my parents couldn't be bothered. I stood up, grabbed the landline off the dresser, and started dialing. The dial tone buzzed in my ear. No answer. Again. I slammed the landline back into the cradle and turned toward the hallway. If they weren't going to pick up, fine. I had other things to deal with. I made my way down the hall, passing the old family portraits. My grandfather's eyes stared at me from every photo, stern but steady, always with that quiet edge, like he knew something before anyone else did. He used to say the farm was a family business, but not the way people say it with pride, more like a warning, like don't screw around with what matters. I pushed open the door to the study, same dark wood paneling, same old leather chair he'd sit in to sort bills or read the newspaper like it was national security. In the back, behind the bookshelf, was the safe, big, gray, serious looking. When I was little, I used to imagine there were gold bars inside. I knelt down in front of it, heart pounding. I hadn't thought about the code in years. He gave it to me the day I left for vet school, said it was in case of real emergencies. It was the date his father bought the farm. I punched it in, 195804. Click. The door opened. Inside was an envelope, thick, yellowed. My name was written across it in black pen, his handwriting slanted and sharp. I took it out and sat on the floor right there. The first page was the will, dated and notarized. No fluff, no warm intros, just to whom it may concern. I kept reading. Paragraph 3 stopped me cold. In the event of my death or the death of my wife, Alice, the estate shall only pass to those children or direct descendants who are physically present within 12 hours of either passing. Absence without documented medical or legal excuse shall constitute forfeiture of rights. I read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. He meant it. He knew. There was no way that clause existed unless he'd already seen what my parents were becoming. Ghosts in their own family, always busy, always somewhere else. The next page was sharper, like a knife dressed up in legal jargon. Presence is the foundation of family. Those who fail to show up when it counts forfeit all claims, financial, legal, emotional. That line hit harder than anything I'd heard from him when he was alive. Then came the final page, his handwriting again, this time in black ink and all caps. Ella, execute what's written. No exceptions. There was no room for interpretation, no loopholes, no warm goodbye or personal message, just a command. I folded the pages back into the envelope and stood up. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name, Gregory Jameson. My grandfather mentioned him once, years ago. Said he was the only lawyer he trusted in the whole state. I hit call. 3 rings. Jameson Law, a woman answered. This is Ella Carter. I need to speak with Gregory. It's urgent. 1 moment. Silence, then a click. This is Gregory. His voice was low, firm. My grandfather, Richard Carter, he left me instructions. I found the will. There was a pause. Is Alice still living? For now, I said. But it won't be long. And your parents? On a beach in Mexico. They haven't answered their phones. Another pause. Then, do you understand what the will means, Miss Carter? I do. Then we move quickly. He gave me a list, what to prepare, what he needed scanned and emailed within the next hour. No delays. When I hung up, I looked around the study. This room used to feel too big for me. Now it felt like armor. I sat down at the desk and started scanning pages, each beep of the machine syncing with a new wave of clarity. They left her behind. They chose this. Now it was my turn to choose. I pressed send on the email and picked up the envelope again. Time to follow orders. I left the study, phone in hand, the envelope locked back in the safe. I walked straight to the kitchen and leaned on the counter, staring out the window at the empty field. Then I hit call on Dad's number. It rang and rang. No answer. I tried Mom. Same thing. I clenched the phone tighter and hit record. Alice is dying. She's in hospice-level condition. No care team. Nothing. I'm here alone. You need to get back now. I sent it to both of them, then tossed the phone on the table and grabbed a glass of water. My hands were shaking. 15 minutes passed. Nothing. 40 minutes. Still nothing. An hour and change later, the screen lit up. One message. From Mom. We're too stressed right now, Ella. This is supposed to be a break. We'll talk later. That was it. No question about Grandma. No apology. I stared at that sentence, trying to process just how cold it felt. I tapped her profile out of instinct and opened Instagram. New post. Them in a cabana, both smiling wide, frozen drinks in hand. Caption, finally relaxing. No drama, just sun. I scrolled. There were more. Golf outings, spa shots, fancy dinners. They were on another planet. I walked back down the hall toward Grandma's room. She hadn't moved. Just that slow, steady beep, like the machine was trying to keep her tethered to this place. I sat beside her and whispered, "They're not coming." No response. I didn't expect one. I leaned back, phone still in my hand, and opened the call log. Gregory. I hit redial. He picked up fast. I spoke to them, I said flatly. Well, tried to. I sent a message. Mom texted back. Said they're too stressed. Did you document it? Yes, text saved, timestamped. I've got screenshots of the message and their social media posts from today. Good, he said. We build the paper trail now. Keep every message, log every attempt to contact. If they don't show within the legal window, we trigger the clause. You're doing the right thing. I swallowed hard. Just confirm. If she passes and they're not here, it's final? Correct, the will is binding. As long as the documentation shows they were informed and chose not to come, they forfeit their rights. There's no room for misinterpretation. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I just sat there. The only sounds were the soft hum of the oxygen machine and the wind pushing against the windows. The betrayal didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt dull, heavy, like I'd been carrying it longer than I realized. They weren't just busy. They weren't forgetful. They didn't care. I stayed by Grandma's side, phone face down on the table, and watched the screen go black. Let them post. Let them drink. I'd be here. I'd show up. The oxygen machine kept humming like a tired engine. The heart monitor blinked steady and slow. I pulled the old recliner closer to Grandma's bed and wrapped myself in the quilt folded at her feet. The room was dim, the kind of quiet you could feel in your bones. My phone buzzed again. Another missed call. Mom this time, then Dad, then both, over and over. I didn't answer. They'd had days. I wasn't going to waste the last few hours that mattered pretending they deserved a say now. I glanced at the clock. Just past 3 a.m. The wind outside rattled the window pane. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard creaked on its own. I leaned forward and adjusted the blanket over Grandma's shoulders. Her skin looked like parchment, thin and fragile. She didn't speak, didn't open her eyes, just breathed, faint and fading. This room used to be warm. Her perfume used to hang in the air, lavender and clean laundry. Now it smelled like antiseptic and dying time. Still, I stayed. I held her hand through the night, even when my own fingers went numb. I didn't check social media, didn't look at texts. Nothing outside this room mattered. At 9 a.m. sharp, her breathing changed, softer, shallow. Each inhale came with more effort than the last. I stood up and walked into the hallway to call the home care agency. They'd sent a nurse yesterday to set up a file, but no one had returned since. When they answered, I didn't waste time. "She's transitioned," I said. "We need hospice care now. No more machines." The nurse arrived 30 minutes later. Her name was Carla. She was quiet, gentle. She didn't ask questions about why no one else was there. She just handed me the forms. "Next of kin?" she asked. "I'm all she has," I said. "I'm the one here." I signed everything. Withdrawal of treatment, hospice transition, legal witness. My handwriting barely held steady. At 11:47 a.m., I was sitting back in the chair, holding Grandma's hand. At 12:02 p.m., the monitor flatlined. No final gasp, no last words. Just a slow exhale, like she was finally done holding on for everyone else. Carla came in, shut off the machines, and nodded. "She's gone." I nodded back. I didn't cry. There was no panic, no chaos. She didn't die alone. And she didn't die under their thumb. I walked over to the dresser, grabbed the family photo off the top, and flipped it down. Then my phone vibrated. Again. I picked it up this time. It was Mom. Her voice came through like fire. "Who the hell do you think you are making decisions without us?" I held the phone away for a second. Let her yell. "She was our mother, Ella. You had no right." I cut her off. Calm, cold. "You weren't here." Silence on her end. "You didn't come. You knew. You chose not to." "She wasn't that sick. You're overreacting." I didn't give her another second. I ended the call, tossed the phone on the bed. 12 hours had passed. They were done. I walked out to the porch. The August air hit my skin like heat off a grill. I looked out at the fields, brown and still. Then I dialed Gregory. "She's gone," I said. "I'm sorry," he replied. "We'll proceed immediately." And we did. I was still on the porch when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Their rental car rolled up like they were arriving at a damn resort. Sleek, black tinted windows. Mom stepped out in wedge sandals and a wide brim hat. Dad slammed his door like he owned the ground beneath it. They didn't look around, didn't pause, just marched straight toward the front door. I didn't move. Through the window, I watched Mom stop in the entryway like she expected a welcome. She looked around, lips pursed. "Where's Alice?" she called like she was asking about a misplaced purse. I followed them in. "She passed. Yesterday." Mom spun around. "You didn't wait for us?" "You weren't here," I said. Dad stepped forward. "We were on a flight?" "No," I snapped. "You were on a beach. You got my message 2 days ago." Mom's voice turned sharp. "You think you're in charge now? You've been gone for years." "And I came back when it mattered," I said. "Neither of you even called until it was over." She looked me up and down, then glanced around the house. "Where's the will?" "We need to go over what's ours." I smiled, tight, calm. "That's already handled." The will was executed through Gregory Jameson. He's filed everything. "What the hell are you talking about?" Dad barked. "You went behind our backs?" I pulled out the folder from the side table and held it up. "I followed the instructions Grandpa left. Every form signed. Every deadline met. The estate is in my name now." Mom's face twisted. "You manipulated her. You took advantage of her condition. Alice never would have wanted this." "She did want this." "So did Grandpa. You weren't here. You gave that up." Dad stepped closer. "This is theft." "No," I said flatly. "This is consequence." Mom pointed a finger at me. "You'll be hearing from our attorney." "You have no idea what you've started." "Then tell your lawyer to speak to mine," I said. "And maybe go ahead and look up what forfeiture clause means while you're at it." The room went quiet for a second. They didn't expect me to stand my ground. They expected the quiet, obliging daughter they left behind years ago. Not this version. Not now. Mom folded her arms, but I could already see the cracks. Her anger wasn't fire. It was fear dressed up in control. This house is ours, Dad said again, but his voice was weaker. No, I said. This house is mine. The farm is mine. The decision was made the moment you didn't show up. They stood there like they didn't know whether to scream or beg. I opened the front door. You can leave now, or you can wait for the court papers to hit your mailbox. Either way, we're done here. I didn't wait for them to leave the driveway. I shut the door behind them, locked it, grabbed the folder, and headed straight to my truck. Gregory's office was 2 towns over in Hastings, tucked into a quiet brick building next to a dental clinic and a pizza place that smelled like grease and regret. I parked, walked in, and found him already waiting in the conference room with papers spread out like a war map. He didn't ask how it went, just said, "They're already moving." I sat down across from him. How fast? They filed a preliminary motion this morning. I just got the alert. They're claiming emotional manipulation and elder coercion. I let out a dry laugh. Of course they are. Gregory didn't blink. We're ahead of it. The will is ironclad. Every signature verified, timestamped documentation, your communication attempts, the hospice records, Alice's condition. It's all recorded. I looked through the stack he'd organized, not just legal filings, but statements, dated evidence, notarized copies. Everything my grandfather had set in motion, now carried forward. Gregory pointed to a manila envelope. We'll submit our response by end of day, along with a counterclaim for legal harassment should they escalate. They will, I said. He nodded. Good. That works in our favor. By noon, I was officially listed as the executor and primary heir on the county's public record. Everything tied to the estate, the land, the house, the accounts, now passed through me. By 3 p.m., a courier showed up at the house and handed me a white envelope with my full name printed in bold type. Legal Service, Carter v. Carter. They weren't wasting time. Inside were claims straight out of a soap opera. That I pressured Alice into end-of-life decisions. That I isolated her from the family. That I manipulated her grief after Grandpa's death to turn her against her own children. I sent the whole thing to Gregory. 30 minutes later, he called. I've seen worse, he said. We'll hit back with a full timeline, medical records, and your witness list. Witness list? Veterans, farm workers, anyone who can speak to Alice's wishes or your involvement here. I wasn't sure where to start. But then calls started coming in. First was Hank. He used to run equipment maintenance for Grandpa, retired now. He told me years ago you'd be the one to carry it, he said. Said you had the heart for it. Not like them. Then my uncle's old friend, Daryl, Vietnam vet, who'd spent years helping Grandpa run the North Pasture. He showed me the draft of that will. He wanted this airtight. Every voice, every call, stacked another brick under my feet. This wasn't just a legal case. It was a damn torch being passed. I spent the next few days combing through old records, pulling bank statements, documenting the property line. Gregory sent over drafts, affidavits, and formal replies. The more I worked, the more it settled in. This wasn't about money. It was about legacy. This farm wasn't just dirt and tractors. It was history. Every inch of it soaked in the lives of people who built something they didn't want to see sold off for cash or used as a bargaining chip in a family tantrum, and now I was responsible for all of it. It felt heavy, but not in a bad way, like it mattered. That night, I walked the fields. The wheat swayed under a low breeze. I remembered Grandpa saying the land only listens to people who respect it. I wasn't going anywhere. Let them sue. Let them twist the story. I had the truth, and I showed up. 2 days after I walked the field, my name was on a news ticker. Small town local, but still. Headline across the screen, daughter accused of manipulating elderly grandmother for inheritance. My stomach dropped. They really went there. By noon, the article was on Facebook, shared by some distant cousin I hadn't talked to in years, captioned with, "If this is true, it's disgusting." I didn't click it. Didn't have to. I already knew who was behind it. My parents had hired a PR firm. They weren't even hiding it. Mom gave an interview the next day, sitting outside a damn resort in California, crocodile tears and everything. She was isolated, vulnerable, and we were cut off, she said into the camera. We didn't even know she was dying. Bullshit. The clip was edited, polished, the perfect mix of victim and righteous anger. By the next morning, my Instagram was a war zone. Strangers and family friends, some I remembered from church as a kid, were flooding my DMs. How could you do this to your own parents? Your grandmother would be ashamed. Disgusting, greedy. Snake. I muted everything, deleted the apps off my phone. Gregory called me that afternoon. You see the press? Yeah. They're pushing hard, but it's desperation. Emotion doesn't win in court, evidence does. Still feels like a knife to the gut, I muttered. He paused. Stay steady, don't engage, let them spiral. You stay focused. So I did. I kept my head down and ran the farm, cleared brush, called in repairs, moved Grandma's things out of the back room, and turned it into a space for the hospice team we'd never gotten in time. Every day, I worked until my hands were sore and my back ached. Let the world think what it wanted. I knew what was real. One morning, I drove to the cemetery just past town. I brought daisies, Grandma's favorite, even though she always pretended they were too plain. Her headstone was still fresh. Simple. Just her name and the dates. No frills. I knelt down and ran my fingers over the etched letters. They think they're winning, I said quietly, but they have no idea who they're dealing with. The wind blew through the trees behind me. Somewhere in my chest, the storm calmed a little. When I got back to the farm, Gregory called again. They're cracking, he said. Filed another extension today. Their lawyer's stalling, hoping to find something, anything, to drag this out. Let them try, I said. You holding up? I'm not folding, if that's what you're asking, he chuckled. Didn't think you would. That week, I fixed the north fence line, rehired 2 of Grandpa's old ranch hands, and started laying out plans for next season's crop. I didn't post about it, didn't announce it, just did the work. One day at a time, the same way he taught me. The courtroom smelled like floor wax and nerves. I sat in the front row with Gregory beside me, hands folded, jaw tight. I wore a plain navy dress and pulled my hair back in a low bun. Nothing flashy, nothing performative, just real. Mom walked in 10 minutes late with her lawyer glued to her side. She wore all black, like this was a funeral. Dad came in behind her, chewing gum and pretending he wasn't sweating. Their attorney, some high-priced guy from Omaha named Langston, strutted in like it was Broadway. His suit looked like it cost more than my truck. The judge, a tall woman with sharp eyes and no patience, called us to order. Langston stood first, all dramatic breath and fake concern. Your Honor, this case is not about money. It's about justice. My clients were cut out of their rightful legacy by manipulation, coercion, and emotional exploitation. The defendant, Ella Carter, isolated her dying grandmother, controlled her access, and pressured her into rewriting legal documents under duress. I didn't flinch. He kept going. We have witnesses prepared to testify about Ella's sudden return, her controlling behavior, and the suspicious timing of the will's execution. Gregory leaned toward me and muttered, It's all performance. Let it pass. Langston sat down with a satisfied little smirk. The judge turned to Gregory. Mr. Jameson? He stood, calm as ever. Your Honor, we intend to let the facts speak for themselves. We call Ella Carter to the stand. I walked up, swore in, and took my seat. Gregory stepped forward. Ella, where were your parents at the time of Alice Carter's passing? On vacation. I had informed them she was gravely ill and they chose not to return. And when you found Alice, was she receiving adequate care? She was alone, unattended. No nurse, no hospice support. Her condition was declining fast? Did you manipulate her into changing any legal documents? No. Did she appear confused, distressed, or coerced at any point? She was unconscious most of the time. The will had already been drafted long before I got home. Langston stood up, ready to pounce. Miss Carter, you claim this was all prearranged, but you were the only one present. Isn't it convenient that a will favoring you shows up just as your grandmother's health fails? Gregory didn't flinch. We anticipated this. He pulled a flash drive from his folder, walked to the TV cart, and handed it to the clerk. Your Honor, this is a recorded message from Richard Carter, dated April 22nd of last year, notarized and submitted as supplemental evidence. The judge nodded. Proceed. The screen flickered on. Grandpa appeared, sitting at his desk, hat off, hands folded. If you're watching this, he said, then Alice or I have passed, and you two, Paul and Dana, are trying to clean up after years of not giving a damn. Mom's face turned pale. Dad stared at the floor. Grandpa kept talking, calm, steady. I made the will clear. If you weren't there when it counted, you don't get the rewards. Ella's the only one I trust with this place. She's earned it. He leaned closer to the camera. Showing up matters. That's the only legacy worth leaving behind. The screen went black. The courtroom stayed silent. The judge looked at Langston. Do you wish to proceed with your claim? He hesitated, then glanced at my parents, who looked like they'd swallowed glass. No, Your Honor. Then I'm dismissing this case with prejudice. The will stands. Miss, Carter retains full rights to the estate. Bang of the gavel. That was it. I stood up. Gregory offered a quick nod. I didn't look at my parents. Didn't have to. I walked out the front door of that courthouse into the sun, not smiling, not cheering, just steady. This wasn't victory, it was closure. The courtroom, the press, the threats, it all faded like background noise. My parents went back to their life of rented luxury and selective memory. They still post cryptic quotes about family betrayal and staying strong, but no one pays much attention anymore, not even me. I had work to do. The inheritance didn't go to upgrades or vacations. I started a foundation, Carter Roots, small office in town, one part-time assistant, and a mission that stayed close to home. Help the farmers and veterans in this area who get overlooked, just like Grandpa always said they would. We helped cover medical bills, built ramps, repaired tractors, and ran food to shut-ins. No press, no big announcements, just action. I kept the farm running, repaired the irrigation system, got the old barn doors rehung, hired a couple local kids to work weekends and learn the trade. And I kept Grandma's garden alive. She always said it wasn't about the flowers, it was about the work, keeping something growing even when the world goes cold. Memorial Day rolled around, and I held a small ceremony, nothing formal, just a handful of vets, some neighbors, and a few of the old crew who'd worked the farm back in Grandpa's time. We stood in Alice's garden, right where the lavender bloomed thick, and took a moment. No speeches, no prayers, just silence. After they left, I stayed behind, sat on the bench Grandpa built from old fence posts, looked out across the wheat field. The wind moved it in slow waves, just like it used to when he'd stand there with his hands on his hips, squinting into the sun like he was seeing 10 years ahead. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just sat there, grounded. Everything they built was still standing, and now it was mine to carry. Not because I deserved it, not because I fought for it, but because I showed up.